Welcome to the All Sorts podcast, where we like to take, kind of complex topics and make them a little more digestible.
Yeah, break them down.
Exactly. Bite-sized brain food.
I like that.
And today we are taking a deep dive into the world of RBMK reactors.
Okay.
A type of nuclear reactor with a really fascinating and kind of controversial history.
Right?
Yeah. You've sent us a collection of research articles,
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of things, and we're going to break down some of the key takeaways for you.
Exactly. We're going to explore the unique design of these reactors,
Right.
delve into the factors that led to the Chernobyl disaster, and examine the modifications that have been made to improve safety since then.
So RBMK reactors primarily designed and built in the former Soviet Union.
Right.
And they have some distinct features that set them apart from other reactor types.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of stands out to you when we look at just the basics of their design?
Well, the most striking feature of the RBMK design is its use of graphite as a moderator. So most other reactors use water for both moderation and cooling.
Okay.
But RBMK reactors use graphite to slow down neutrons
Right.
and water as a separate coolant.
Separate.
Yeah.
Okay. Why did Soviet engineers choose that approach?
Well, it allowed them to use natural unenriched uranium fuel, which was readily available in the Soviet Union at the time. This was seen as a major advantage, in terms of cost and resource independence.
So it was a design kind of born out of practicality and the geopolitical realities of the time.
Exactly.
But this choice had some unintended consequences.
Yes, it did. This design choice ultimately contributed to the reactor's vulnerability to instability, particularly a phenomenon known as the positive void coefficient.
That sounds ominous.
Yeah, it is.
Can you explain what the positive void coefficient is and why it's so crucial to understanding the RBMK reactor?
Yeah, so in simple terms, the positive void coefficient means that as the reactor's coolant, which is water in this case, heats up and forms steam bubbles or voids, the nuclear reaction actually accelerates. In most other reactor designs, the formation of steam bubbles tends to slow down the reaction, acting like a natural braking mechanism.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So in an RBMK reactor, instead of hitting the brakes, you're stepping on the gas.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
The presence of steam voids can create a feedback loop, where increased steam production leads to a higher reaction rate, potentially causing a runaway chain reaction.
And this positive void coefficient played a role in the Chernobyl disaster, right?
It was one of the key factors, yeah.
So the Chernobyl accident, which occurred on April 26, 1986, was a culmination of several operational errors and design flaws.
Right.
All converging in like a perfect storm of unfortunate events.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think it's important for us to walk through some of the key events that led to the disaster.
Okay.
Particularly focusing on, the role of the reactor's design and the decisions made by the operators that day.
Sure.
So the operators at Chernobyl Unit 4 were conducting a test to see how long the turbines would continue to spin and generate electricity after a simulated loss of offsite power.
Right.
This involved a series of steps, some of which deviated from established safety protocols. What were some of the key decisions that set the stage for the accident?
One crucial decision was to disable several of the reactor's safety systems.
Okay.
So this was done partly to isolate the reactor for the test and partly due to a misunderstanding of the reactor's operating procedures.
So they removed some of the safety nets?
Yeah, and they didn't fully comprehend the risks.
Yeah.
They also withdrew too many control rods from the reactor core, which is kind of like removing the brakes on a car while going downhill.
Thanks.
Yeah. This put the reactor in a highly unstable state with very little margin for error.
And all this was happening with that backdrop of that inherent design flaw, the positive void coefficient.
Exactly.
As the test progressed, the reactor's power output began to fluctuate erratically. The operators trying to stabilize the reactor made further mistakes, including reducing the flow of coolant water into the core, which ironically would have exacerbated the positive void coefficient.
Right, less water, more steam voids leading to an accelerated reaction.
At this point, the reactor was in a highly precarious state, teetering on the brink of instability.
Yeah.
And then a series of events triggered an uncontrollable power surge.
Right.
Can you explain what triggered that surge? Was it a single event or a cascade of events?
It was a combination of factors.
Okay.
The reduced coolant flow led to increased steam void formation, which, due to the positive void coefficient, caused a rapid increase in power output. The operators, realizing that they were losing control, attempted to insert the control rods to shut down the reactor.
But those control rods had a design flaw that worsened the situation.
They did, yeah. Tragic irony.
Yeah.
The tips of the control rods were made of graphite, which, as we discussed earlier, is a moderator.
Right.
So the initial insertion of the control rods actually briefly increased the reaction rate before the neutron-absorbing part of the rods could take effect.
So like trying to hit the brakes and accidentally stepping on the gas?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This initial power spike caused a chain reaction that led to a massive and uncontrollable power surge.
Okay.
The intense heat generated by the runaway reaction caused the fuel rods to rupture, releasing radioactive material into the reactor core.
And this ultimately led to the explosions that destroyed the reactor building.
Yeah.
And released that plume of radioactive material into the atmosphere.
Yes. The combination of steam pressure, hydrogen gas buildup, and the rapid expansion of superheated materials caused a series of explosions.
Okay.
That ripped the reactor apart, spewing radioactive material into the environment.
A truly catastrophic event.
It was.
The Chernobyl disaster is a stark reminder of the immense power of nuclear technology and the importance of safety, both in design and operation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lesson that the nuclear industry has taken to heart, prompting, significant changes in safety regulations, design philosophies, and operational procedures worldwide.
Right, all over the world.
And that brings us to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll examine the modifications made to RBMK reactors.
Okay.
In the aftermath of Chernobyl, stick around as we explore how engineers and scientists sought to learn from this tragedy and make these reactors safer. But for now, let's take a pause, and we'll be back with you in just a moment.
Sounds good. So welcome back to the All Sorts podcast.
Before the break, we were talking about the events leading up to the Chernobyl disaster.
Right.
And now let's shift our focus to the aftermath.
Okay.
And the modifications that were made to RBMK reactors.
Sounds good.
So the Chernobyl accident was like a pivotal moment.
It was.
Not just for the Soviet Union, but for the global nuclear industry.
Right.
What were some of the immediate reactions and actions taken in response to the disaster?
Well, the immediate priority was, of course, containing the disaster, extinguishing the fires, mitigating the spread of radiation. But in parallel with those efforts, there was a global reckoning with the safety of nuclear power, particularly the RBMK design.
So a moment of intense scrutiny and soul-searching.
Yeah, precisely. There was an urgent need to understand what went wrong, to identify the design flaws, the operational errors that contributed to the accident, and to develop strategies to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again.
And this led to a wave of modifications and upgrades to RBMK reactors worldwide.
Yeah, it did. The Soviet authorities, in collaboration with international experts, embarked on a comprehensive program to improve the safety of RBMK reactors.
Okay.
These modifications address both the inherent design vulnerabilities and the operational shortcomings that had been exposed by the Chernobyl accident.
Let's delve into some of those key modifications.
Okay.
What were the most significant changes made to these reactors?
One of the most crucial changes was the addition of more control rods to the reactor core. Remember, the original RBMK 1000 design had a relatively small number of control rods, which limited the operator's ability to control the nuclear reaction quickly and effectively.
And those control rods also had that infamous design flaw with the graphite tips?
Yes, that flaw was also addressed the graphite tips, which had inadvertently increased the reaction rate during the initial insertion of the control rods at Chernobyl, were replaced with non-absorbing materials.
So no more accidental acceleration when trying to slow things down.
Exactly. The modifications ensured that the control rods would act solely as neutron absorbers.
Okay.
Providing a more reliable and predictable means of controlling the chain reaction.
What about the positive void coefficient, that inherent design quirk that made RBMK reactors so prone to sudden power surges? Was anything done to address that?
Yeah, that was another major focus of the modifications. While they couldn't completely eliminate the positive void coefficient, they took steps to mitigate its effects. One key change was increasing the enrichment of the uranium fuel from 2% to 2.4%.
Can you explain why that seemingly small change in fuel enrichment made a difference in terms of safety?
Well, the higher fuel enrichment allowed the reactors to operate at a higher power level.
Okay.
And as we discussed earlier, the positive void coefficient is most pronounced at low power levels.
Right.
By operating at a higher power level, the impact of steam void formation is lessened, making the reactor inherently more stable.
So it's like shifting the operating range to a safer zone, away from that precarious low-power region where the positive void coefficient is most dominant.
That's a good way to put it. They essentially raise the floor, making it less likely for the reactor to stumble into that unstable territory.
Were there any other modifications specifically aimed at addressing the positive void coefficient?
Yes. They also installed additional fixed absorbers in the reactor core. These absorbers are permanently in place, unlike control rods, and they help to soak up excess neutrons, damping down the effects of steam void formation.
So it's like adding extra shock absorbers to a car to make the ride smoother, even on bumpy terrain.
A good analogy, the fixed absorbers provide an additional layer of protection, helping to prevent those sudden power surges that can occur when steam voids form in the reactor core.
These modifications seem to focus primarily on the reactor core itself. Were there any changes made to other parts of the RBMK system, like the containment structures or safety systems?
Yes. The modifications extended beyond the reactor core. The containment structures, which are designed to prevent the release of radioactive material in the event of an accident, were strengthened and improved.
So they essentially fortified the castle walls to better withstand any potential breaches.
Exactly. They also made significant upgrades to the reactor safety systems, including the emergency shutdown system, the instrumentation and control systems, and the cooling systems. These upgrades enhanced the redundancy and reliability of the safety systems, reducing the likelihood of a single point of failure, leading to a catastrophic event.
And all of these modifications were implemented across the entire fleet of RBMK reactors.
Yes, after the Chernobyl accident, all operating RBMK reactors underwent extensive safety upgrades. The Soviet authorities mandated these modifications to ensure that the lessons learned from Chernobyl were applied across the entire RBMK fleet.
These modifications must have been a massive undertaking, both in terms of engineering and cost.
It was a monumental effort requiring significant resources and expertise, but it was seen as an absolute necessity to restore public confidence in nuclear power and to ensure the safe operation of these reactors.
It's a testament to the commitment of the Soviet authorities and the international community to learn from the tragedy of Chernobyl and to make these reactors as safe as possible.
Yes, the post-Chernobyl modifications represent a significant leap forward in terms of RBMK safety, while the inherent design of the RBMK reactor with its positive void coefficient remains a topic of debate. The modifications have undoubtedly reduced the likelihood of a Chernobyl-type accident occurring again.
That's reassuring to hear. But let's shift our focus now to the current status of RBMK reactors after such a devastating accident. Why are some of these reactors still in operation today? Stick with us as we explore the complex factors that have kept these reactors online and the ongoing efforts to ensure their safe operation. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to the All Sorts podcast. We've been exploring the world of RBMK reactors from their unique design to the shadow of Chernobyl and the modifications made since then. Now the big question, why are some of these reactors still running today?
What's a complex question with multiple answers. There's several factors, economic considerations, energy security, and the evolving understanding of risk and safety within the nuclear industry.
Okay, let's break down those factors one by one, starting with economics. What role does cost play in the decision to keep these reactors online?
Well, RBMK reactors, particularly the later models with the post-Chernobyl safety upgrades, are a significant source of electricity generation in the countries where they operate, primarily Russia. Shutting them down would leave a huge energy gap, and it'd be expensive and difficult to fill quickly.
So a real economic reason to keep them going, at least for the time being.
Yeah, the cost of building new power plants, whether they're nuclear or based on something else, is massive.
Sure.
And shifting to other energy sources takes time. It requires careful planning and investment.
What about energy security? How does that play into this?
Energy security is a big worry for a lot of countries, particularly those who depend heavily on a single energy source or import a lot of their energy, RBMK reactors. For the countries that use them, provide a degree of energy independence, reducing their reliance on external sources.
So there's a geopolitical angle to this as well, wanting to control their own energy destinies.
Yeah, energy independence is often seen as a strategic asset, giving them a buffer against global energy market disruptions or political issues with energy-producing countries.
But beyond economics and geopolitics, there's also the changing understanding of risk and safety in the nuclear industry, right?
Definitely. The Chernobyl accident was a turning point that made the nuclear industry worldwide rethink its safety practices, design philosophies, and regulatory frameworks. It led to a stricter and more collaborative approach to nuclear safety, with a focus on transparency, international cooperation, and always improving.
So the argument is that these RBMK reactors running today, after those big modifications and with tougher safety rules, are much safer than they were before Chernobyl.
That's the view of the regulatory bodies in the countries still using these reactors. And to be fair, the post-Chernobyl RBMKs have a much better safety record.
But there must still be some concerns. Even with the changes, those reactors still have the positive void coefficient.
Yes. There are ongoing debates in the nuclear industry about the long-term safety of RBMK reactors. Some experts say that despite improvements, the inherent design vulnerabilities make them riskier than other types, and that we should phase them out as soon as possible. Others believe that with continued attention, close monitoring, and ongoing safety enhancements, they can run safely and reliably.
So it's a tough balancing act, weighing the benefits for the economy and energy security against the risks of this older reactor tech.
Exactly. And the decisions about the future of these reactors will ultimately be made by the countries that operate them, taking into account public opinion, economic realities, and what's happening with energy technology.
This deep dive into RBMK reactors has been a fascinating look at engineering achievements, human mistakes, and the ongoing search for safer energy. We've learned about their unique design, the factors leading to the Chernobyl disaster, the extensive changes made since, and the complex reasons why some are still working today.
Yeah, it's a story that shows how powerful nuclear technology is, both its possibilities and dangers, and it reminds us how important vigilance, innovation, and working together are to use that power safely and responsibly.
It reminds us that learning is a journey that never ends a journey, where we have to question what we think, challenge common ideas, and try to understand the technologies shaping our world better.
And as we keep going on that journey, let's remember what we've learned from the past. Be open to what the future holds and try to make a world where having enough energy and being safe go together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of RBMK reactors. We hope you've learned something about these machines, their history, and their role in global energy.
And as we wrap up, remember to share your thoughts about this topic, leave a comment below, and tell us what you think.
And if you're hungry for more thought-provoking discussions, subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube. Let that notification bell be your signal to a whole universe of knowledge.
And follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads. We're weaving together insights connecting science, history, and culture into a colorful tapestry of knowledge.
Until next time, keep your minds open, your questions coming, and your love of learning burning bright. This is the All Sorts podcast, signing off.